The drone appeared on radar at 2:17 a.m. A Border Patrol agent at the Tucson sector station noticed the blip and assumed it was another smuggling drone. The cartels had been using small commercial quadcopters to move drugs across the border for years. Annoying, but manageable. Then the drone's speed registered, 147 miles per hour. Commercial drones maxed out at 45. This was no smuggling drone. The agent barely had time to radio a warning before the explosion. A fireball erupted at a remote border surveillance post 12 miles east of Nogales. 2 agents were inside. Both survived. Barely. The drone had struck a communications tower 30 feet from their position. Shrapnel tore through the station walls. 1 agent lost his left arm. The other suffered burns over 40% of his body. It was the first combat drone attack on American soil, and it was just a test run. FBI investigation would reveal that Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had supplied Mexican cartels with military-grade attack drones, the same Shahed 136 variants that had devastated Ukrainian cities. 34 drones had already been smuggled into Mexico. Cartel operators had been trained by IRGC advisors, and a coordinated attack on 8 American border facilities was scheduled for 5 days away. This is how the FBI uncovered an Iranian cartel alliance that threatened to bring modern warfare to the American homeland, and stopped it 72 hours before an assault that would have killed dozens of federal agents and civilians. The investigation began with fragments. A TF explosives specialist arrived at the destroyed surveillance post within hours of the attack. They expected to find residue consistent with cartel improvised explosives, crude pipe bombs, or commercial demolition charges. What they found was something entirely different. The explosive signature matched military-grade composition. The detonation pattern indicated a shaped charge designed for armor penetration, and embedded in the wreckage were electronic components that bore manufacturing marks in Farsi. This wasn't cartel improvisation. This was Iranian military technology. FBI counterterrorism was notified immediately. Within 24 hours, a joint task force had been assembled. FBI, ATF, Homeland Security, Defense Intelligence Agency, and representatives from U.S. Southern Command. The fragments told a story that no one wanted to believe. Iran had armed the cartels with weapons of war. The intelligence picture emerged over the following weeks. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had been seeking ways to strike American interests without direct military confrontation. Their traditional approach, funding terrorist proxies in the Middle East, had become increasingly difficult as American intelligence penetrated those networks. They needed a new vector. The cartels offered the perfect solution. Mexican drug trafficking organizations had resources, territory, and a burning grievance against American law enforcement. They moved billions of dollars in contraband across the border every year. They had killed hundreds of people in their wars against rivals and authorities. They were natural allies for a regime that wanted to hurt America. The partnership had been building for 3 years. It started with money. IRGC affiliated banks began processing cartel funds through the same channels they used for sanctions evasion. Iranian shell companies in Dubai and Istanbul laundered hundreds of millions in drug profits. Then came weapons. Small arms at first, K-pattern rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, night vision equipment. The cartels had always been well armed, but Iranian supplies gave them military-grade capabilities. Then came the drones. The Shahed 136 was a weapon that had terrorized Ukraine. A loitering munition. essentially a flying bomb that could circle an area for hours before striking its target. Cheap to produce, difficult to detect, devastating on impact. Iran had supplied hundreds to Russia for attacks on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Now they were in Mexico. FBI intelligence traced the shipment through a complex logistics chain. The drones had been manufactured in Iran, then disassembled and shipped to Venezuela in containers marked as agricultural equipment. From Venezuela, they traveled by sea to a port in Guatemala controlled by cartel-affiliated smugglers. Finally, they were trucked across Mexico to stage in areas near the American border. 34 drones in total, each capable of carrying a 40-kilogram warhead, each with a range of over 1,000 miles, enough to strike targets deep inside American territory. The cartel receiving the drones was the Jalisco New Generation, one of the most violent and sophisticated criminal organizations in the world. CJNG had risen to power through extreme brutality and technological innovation. They were early adopters of armored vehicles, encrypted communications, and drone surveillance. They had assassinated judges, prosecutors, and hundreds of law enforcement officers in Mexico. Their leader had publicly declared war on the American government. DEA operations had killed his son and brother. American sanctions had frozen his assets. Extradition requests had made him a permanent fugitive in his own country. He wanted revenge, and Iran had given him the means to get it. FBI surveillance of cartel communications revealed the operational plan in fragments. The attack was codenamed Operación Amanecer, Operation Sunrise. 8 targets had been selected along the Arizona and Texas borders: border patrol stations, customs checkpoints, a DEA field office in El Paso, the regional headquarters of Homeland Security Investigations in Tucson. The attacks would be simultaneous, launched at dawn, when shift changes meant maximum personnel at each location. Each target would receive 3 to 4 drones, approaching from multiple angles to overwhelm any defensive response. The warheads were packed with ball bearings to maximize casualties. Intelligence estimated 60 to 80 federal agents would be killed in the initial strikes. But that was just the beginning. The attacks were designed to provoke. The cartel expected, wanted, a massive American military response. They believed that U.S. strikes on Mexican territory would destabilize the Mexican government, create chaos in border regions, and ultimately expand cartel control. And Iran would watch from a distance as America bled. The FBI faced an impossible timeline. The attack was 12 days away when the operational plan was first intercepted. Fragmentary intelligence, partial target lists, no specific locations for the drone staging areas. They needed more information. An FBI undercover operation had been running inside cartel logistics networks for 2 years. The undercover agent, deep cover, operating under an assumed identity, had built relationships with mid-level cartel operatives involved in weapons trafficking. The agent was activated. Within 48 hours, the undercover operative had made contact with individuals connected to the drone operation. The cartel was proud of their new capabilities. They talked. The agent learned the location of the primary staging area, a ranch 40 miles south of the border in Sonora State. The drones were being assembled there. IRGC technical advisors were on site, training cartel operators. The agent learned the attack timeline had accelerated. American intelligence activity had been detected. The cartel suspected they were being watched. The attack was now 5 days away. Operation Desert Thunder was authorized at the highest levels of the American government. The operation presented extraordinary challenges. The drone staging area was in Mexico, sovereign territory where U.S. law enforcement had no authority to operate. The Mexican government was theoretically an ally, but cartel infiltration of Mexican security services made any coordination risky. If the cartels learned that the Americans knew about the attack, they could accelerate the timeline, disperse the drones, or simply wait and strike later when surveillance had relaxed. The operation required perfect coordination between intelligence gathering, diplomatic engagement, and tactical action. And it had to happen in 5 days. The diplomatic track moved first. American officials presented evidence of the Iranian cartel connection to Mexican counterparts. Carefully selected individuals believed to be free of cartel influence. The evidence was overwhelming. Satellite imagery of the drone facility, intercepted communications, financial records tracing Iranian payments. The Mexican government faced an impossible choice. Allowing American action on Mexican soil would be politically devastating, a violation of sovereignty that would trigger public outrage. But refusing to act meant allowing an attack on American territory launched from Mexico, potentially triggering an American military response that would be far more destructive. After 72 hours of negotiations, an agreement was reached. Mexican special forces would conduct the raid on the drone facility, with American intelligence support and American personnel observing from a distance. The operation would be presented as a Mexican counter-narcotics action. The Americans would handle the IRGC advisors. The raid launched at 3 a.m. on a moonless night. Mexican Marines approached the ranch from 3 directions. American surveillance drones provided real-time intelligence. FBI tactical teams waited at the border, ready to respond if any drones were launched toward American territory. The cartel's security was formidable. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Counter-surveillance equipment scanned for approaching threats. The ranch had been fortified with fighting positions and pre-positioned weapons, but they weren't expecting an assault. The Mexican Marines hit hard and fast. Helicopter gunships neutralized the outer security positions. Ground teams breached the perimeter before defenders could organize resistance. The firefight lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, 23 cartel operatives were dead. 14 were captured, including 3 drone operators who had been trained by Iranian advisors, and the drones were secured. The FBI's role came in the operation's second phase. The 3 IRGC advisors at the facility had attempted to flee during the raid. They made it 12 miles before Mexican military intercepted their vehicle. Under the diplomatic agreement, the Iranians were transferred to American custody. The transfer happened at the border, a quiet exchange on a remote road away from cameras and witnesses. 3 Iranian Revolutionary Guard officers, responsible for arming cartels with weapons designed to kill American agents, were now in FBI hands. They were transported to a federal detention facility in Arizona. Their interrogation would reveal the full scope of Iranian operations in the Western Hemisphere. The intelligence extracted from the captured Iranians was devastating. The drone operation was just one component of a broader IRGC strategy to develop proxy capabilities in the Americas. Similar programs were underway with criminal organizations in Colombia, Venezuela, and Central America. The goal was strategic: create networks that could strike American interests anywhere in the hemisphere, forcing the United States to defend thousands of miles of borders and coastlines against threats that could emerge anywhere. The cartels were perfect partners. They had no ideology that might conflict with Iranian interests. They wanted money and weapons. Iran wanted chaos and American casualties. The alignment was perfect. The captured Iranians identified 12 additional IRGC operatives working with criminal organizations across Latin America. They provided details on weapons shipments, financial channels, and training programs. American intelligence services had a roadmap to dismantle the entire network. The prosecution of the captured cartel operatives revealed the human dimensions of the plot. The drone operators were young men, early 20s, recruited from poor communities in Jalisco State. They had been promised money, status, and protection for their families. They had been told they were defending Mexico against American imperialism. They had no real understanding of what they had been preparing to do. When shown photographs of the border agents who would have been killed, men and women with families, some not much older than themselves, several broke down. They had been told they were striking military targets, legitimate combatants in a war. They hadn't imagined the faces. Others showed no remorse. They had been conditioned to see Americans as enemies. The border agents who intercepted drug shipments, the DEA agents who killed cartel leaders, the prosecutors who sought extradition, they were all legitimate targets. War was war. The ideological poison ran deep. The 34 seized drones were transported to American military facilities for analysis. Defense Department specialists were shocked by what they found. The drones had been modified specifically for cartel operations. Navigation systems were programmed with American GPS coordinates. Targeting software included imagery of the 8 planned strike locations. The warheads had been optimized for anti-personnel effects. These weren't repurposed Ukrainian weapons. They had been built specifically to kill Americans. The analysis also revealed Iranian manufacturing advances that intelligence agencies hadn't previously documented. New propulsion systems, improved guidance algorithms, enhanced warhead designs. The cartels had been receiving Iran's latest technology, weapons that hadn't yet appeared on any battlefield. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and severe. The American government presented evidence of Iranian involvement to the United Nations Security Council. Satellite imagery, captured documents, testimony from the detained IRGC officers. Iran denied everything. State media called the accusations fabricated provocations. Government officials claimed the captured officers were businessmen who had been kidnapped by American agents. They demanded their immediate return. The international community was divided. American allies condemned Iranian actions. Russia and China called for restraint and questioned the evidence. The UN issued statements expressing concern but took no concrete action. Meanwhile, new sanctions were imposed on IRGC-affiliated entities. Iranian diplomatic personnel were expelled from several Latin American countries. Intelligence sharing with regional partners was enhanced. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the broader conflict continued. The surviving border agents from the initial attack testified before Congress. The agent who lost his arm described the moment of the explosion. The flash of light, the searing pain, the confusion of not understanding what had happened. He had served 14 years on the border, faced armed smugglers and cartel gunmen, but nothing had prepared him for a military strike on his station. The agent with severe burns spoke of his recovery. Months in a burn unit, skin grafts, physical therapy that continued years later. He would never return to field duty. His career protecting the border was over. Both expressed gratitude to the FBI agents and military personnel who had stopped the larger attack. They had been the first casualties. Without Operation Desert Thunder, they would have had dozens of companions. The investigation exposed vulnerabilities that extended far beyond this single plot. American border infrastructure had never been designed to withstand military attack. Surveillance stations were unarmored. Checkpoints had no air defense capabilities. The assumption had always been that threats came from smugglers and traffickers, not from hostile nations. That assumption was now obsolete. The Department of Homeland Security launched a comprehensive review of border security posture. New detection systems were deployed to identify drone threats. Counter-drone capabilities were positioned at critical facilities. Emergency response protocols were developed for scenarios that had previously seemed unthinkable. The border had become a potential battlefield. The 3 captured IRGC officers faced federal charges in American courts. The charges were unprecedented: conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism, providing material support to terrorist organizations, attempted murder of federal agents, and weapons trafficking. Their defense attorneys argued that they were prisoners of war entitled to Geneva Convention protections, not criminal defendants subject to American law. Courts rejected the argument. The men were intelligence operatives conducting covert operations against the United States. They had no military status. They had directed attacks designed to kill American personnel. They were terrorists. All 3 were convicted after a trial that revealed extensive evidence of Iranian government direction and support. Each received life sentences without possibility of parole. They would die in American prisons. A message to Tehran about the consequences of attacking American soil. The cartel leadership that had partnered with Iran faced different consequences. Within months of Operation Desert Thunder, Mexican and American operations had decimated Jalisco New Generation's senior command structure. The intelligence captured in the drone raid led to dozens of additional operations. Safe houses were raided. Financial networks were disrupted. Communication systems were compromised. The cartel's leader remained at large, protected by an army of gunmen in the mountains of Jalisco. But his organization had been crippled. The dream of striking America with military force had turned into a nightmare of arrests, seizures, and relentless pressure. Other cartels took note. The Sinaloa organization quietly ended its own discussions with Iranian intermediaries. The risks were too high. American retaliation too severe. The cartels would continue their drug trafficking and human smuggling, but military attacks on American territory were off the table. For now, the 8 border facilities that had been targeted continued to operate. The agents stationed at those locations learned, after the fact, how close they had come to death. Some requested transfers. Others recommitted to their mission with new determination. They installed photographs of the 2 wounded agents from the initial attack, reminders of what had almost happened and what had been prevented. Every morning, as they began their shifts, they passed those photographs. Every morning, they remembered. Operation Desert Thunder prevented the first coordinated military attack on American Homeland Security personnel since the War of 1812. 34 drones that would have killed 60 to 80 federal agents. An attack designed to provoke chaos and conflict. An alliance between a state sponsor of terrorism and the most violent criminal organizations in the Western Hemisphere. All stopped 72 hours before execution. The FBI agents who worked the case understood what they had prevented. Not an abstract threat, not a theoretical scenario. A war on American soil. Explosions at border stations, body bags filled with federal agents, families destroyed, a nation traumatized. None of that happened, because an investigation that began with fragments of an Iranian drone led to the exposure of an alliance that threatened American security in ways that had never been imagined. The threat has not disappeared. Iran continues to develop proxy capabilities worldwide. The cartels continue to seek advantages against their enemies. The alignment of interests that produced Operation Sunrise still exists. Somewhere, right now, hostile actors are planning the next attack, developing new capabilities, seeking new allies, and somewhere, FBI agents are watching, analyzing fragments, building cases, preparing to stop threats before they materialize. This is the invisible war, the attacks that never happen, the deaths that never occur, the catastrophes that are prevented before anyone knows they were coming. This is what the FBI does every day, whether you know it or not.